second set of mugshots. So just as a reminder, the expectations for your mugshots lessons are that you are taking notes in your notebook on each lesson. So you should keep these notes in a notebook that is dedicated to your English class, because that way you're going to be able to look back on them easily and refer to them when you start writing. Also, make sure that you complete the sentence exercises to the best of your ability. It's okay to be wrong. Don't be afraid of being wrong when you complete these sentence exercises. That's why they're exercises, they're practice. Remember that mistakes are how we learn. Please make sure that you ask your English teacher questions if you're uncertain about something so that he or she can explain it in a different way. I know that they'd be happy to do so. So, without further ado, let's get started on set 2. Today we will be talking about possession, because it's not that kind of possession. Don't worry. Don't be afraid. Not that kind of possession. We're talking about possession in terms of ownership. Specifically, when to use apostrophes to show possession or to show ownership, to show that someone owns something. So, our punctuation rule today has to do with apostrophes and possession. You use an apostrophe to show possession, but how exactly? Well, the rule changes based on what we need. First, to show possession with a singular noun, so just one thing, to show that something is owned by one noun, you add an apostrophe S. You've probably heard of this before. This might be a review for you, and that's okay. For regular nouns that form their plurals by adding either the letter S or ES, so guy turns into guys by adding an S, letter turns into letters, actress turns into actresses, etc. Those are regular nouns. To show plural possession, you want to add an apostrophe after that last S. That shows that ownership is done by a group, all the guys, not just one guy. For irregular nouns that do not become plural with S, we treat those like singular nouns. So child becomes children, right? Not childs. Woman becomes women, not womans. Tooth becomes teeth, not tooths, etc. So for those, we just add an apostrophe S as if they were singular, even though they're plural. So this might sound easy. It might be a review for you. You've probably heard this before, but I'm still going over it because I see a lot of you making mistakes with apostrophes in possession. I see some of you putting apostrophes before the S when they're supposed to be after the S, or after the S when they're supposed to be before the S. Or sometimes you don't use apostrophes at all. Remember, like all punctuation marks, apostrophes are important because without them, they can completely change the meaning of your sentence. But a big, really important thing to remember, above all else, is that you do not ever make a noun plural by adding an apostrophe. You only use an apostrophe if you are trying to show possession or if you have a contraction in some cases. But if you just want to say the noun is plural, you shouldn't use an apostrophe. Don't use an apostrophe for no reason. It's weird and awkward, and it makes your sentence more confusing than it needs to be. So, let's look at some examples. First, we have examples of possessive singular nouns. A woman's hat. Woman apostrophe S. That means that the hat belongs to who? The woman. The boss's wife. The wife, this is going to sound kind of backwards, the wife belongs to the boss. Apostrophe S. Even though we have those two S's after the O, we need another apostrophe S to show ownership of the wife. Of course, when I'm talking about ownership here, not talking about owning people because it's 2020, but hopefully you know what I mean. Or Mrs. Chang's house. To show that the house belongs to Mrs. Chang, we need to put an apostrophe S after Chang. With plural nouns, it's really similar. For the guy's night out, the night out belongs to all of the guys, not just one guy. So we have to say guys first, make it plural, and then put the apostrophe after the S and guys to show that this belongs to all the guys. All the guys are going on this night out. If we just did guy apostrophe S instead of the guy's night out, singular, that would be really sad. It's just one guy's night out. All his friends ditched him. It's only his. No, we want to share the night out. We want to share this night with our friends, so we're going to put the apostrophe after the S. And then we have two actresses' roles. So it's the same thing, even if you have to put an ES to make the word plural. You always put the apostrophe after that final S to show that these roles belong to multiple actresses, not just one actress. And remember, we treat irregular plural nouns, so plural nouns that become plural without adding S, we treat those like we would singular nouns when it comes to possession. So the teeth's roots. The roots belong to all the teeth because we have teeth instead of tooth. Two children's hats. The hats belong to the two children. We have an apostrophe S here instead of an S apostrophe because we don't need to add an S to make child plural. We change it to children. You might have thought that we were done with commas, but we're not done with commas. We're never done with commas. Well, maybe someday we'll be done with commas, but not today. So here's comma rule number 7. Comma rule number 7 is you want to use a comma to set off appositives. What? Appositives. So an appositive is a noun or a noun phrase that renames a nearby noun. Appositives generally offer non-essential information. That might sound familiar. Non-restrictive appositives are set off with commas, and restrictive appositives are not. This is similar to the slice of cake rule. So this is very much the kind of rule that you start to understand once you see examples in action. So let's go ahead and look at some examples. First, we have this sentence. Alexander Pope, the Restoration poet, is famous for his monologues. So if we look at this sentence, we have a proper name, Alexander Pope, and we have the Restoration poet, which is the appositive. The appositive is going to come second. So if we look at the two things that we have here, we have Alexander Pope being described as the Restoration poet, or being renamed as the Restoration poet. And we know that Alexander Pope is a proper name, the Restoration poet, that's more of a description. So the appositive is second. Let's see if it's non-restrictive or restrictive. If we were to take out the appositive and just say that Alexander Pope is famous for his monologues, that would make sense. We're not losing any necessary information. We still know exactly who we're talking about because we still have the proper name. So this appositive is non-restrictive. We could take it out, just like the slice of cake rule. So we're going to put commas around it to show that we could take it out. So let's look at this example, and this one's a little different. So here we have the poet Pope is famous for his monologues. Now this time, the proper name comes second, Pope. That's the appositive. And the description of Pope is the poet, except the poet comes first. So Pope is the appositive. Now, if we were to take out the appositive and just say the poet is famous for his monologues, that sentence is losing necessary information. Because which poet? We just took out the most important identifying information, the proper name. So we cannot take out the appositive in this sentence. That means that Pope here is a restrictive appositive, and we should not put commas around it because we cannot take it out. Here's another example. In this example, we have the New York Jets, the underdogs, surprised everyone by winning the Super Bowl. So here our appositive is the underdogs, which is a description or a renaming of the New York Jets. So if we were to take out the underdogs and just say the New York Jets surprised everyone by winning the Super Bowl, would that still make sense? Yes. And it would still have all the necessary information. So we can keep the appositive, we can keep the underdogs in, but again, we want to put commas around it to show that we could take it out. So again, this is basically the slice of cake rule. But another way to remember it is that if you have a proper name and a description in a sentence, if the proper name of the thing comes before the description, then you need commas around your appositive. So that's going to be the second thing, is the appositive. However, if the proper name comes after the description, you don't need commas. All right? So if I were to, for example, to say, Mr. Chris Gray's principal of OHS, because the description comes after the name, I would need to put commas around the description. If I were to say principal of OHS, Mr. Chris Gray's, when the description comes before the name, I would not need to put commas around the description. So that's another way to remember this. Here's your sentence exercise for today. Remember that sentence exercises are cumulative, so any rules that you've learned about mechanics, usage, and grammar in past mugshots lessons might pop up in this sentence exercise too, not just the ones that we learned today. So write this down and do your best to correct it. According to the New York Times, Mickey Mantle, legendary center fielder for the New York Yankees, broke Babe Ruth's record for both home runs and strikeouts. So this sentence exercise has 4 mistakes. So try to find all 4 mistakes. It's okay if you don't. And your teacher will go over the corrections with you tomorrow.